This is an Asbo, and it was donated by a young person who at the time was working as a street outreach worker.
This is a very angry piece of paper, which is a Asbo for begging on the streets.
I received a copy of it whilst I was
doing
doing some outreach work in London. It was a copy that was given to somebody that I was having a really nice conversation with, which was rudely interrupted by this angry piece of paper from some police officers. It was given to the person, and after it was given to the person, I decided to have a conversation with the police officers about what they thought about the piece of paper that they just handed to somebody. The police officers themselves didn't agree with what they were doing because they didn't believe it was effective practice, but they had to do it as it was the law. It's such a common thing that people just accepted it because they don't have a choice. It's either accept it or get arrested. It's a good fast track into the criminal justice system. So the person has also been arrested in the past, but they don't really have a choice about receiving it because they have to do what they're doing to live. You know, they don't exist. Yeah, so the paper outlines rules of movement for people. So it's quite often blocks off a certain area that somebody can't be in. Yeah, so they're not allowed to exist in that area at all, regardless of whether there's an important service that they're using in there, or there's food that they need to live in that place, or you know their friends are living there, or you know they're just very comfortable and feel safe in that environment. They're not allowed to be in there, or they risk prison. I've seen people cry after being given this because that's the only area that they feel safe in, and you know they're not familiar with the places. That's where they feel safe as a vulnerable person. Quite often this is used as a sweep up of an area, depending on what's going on in the locality. So in central London, where this one was issued, quite often you know there'll be an event going on, like a big public event. So it's quite often used to just hide vulnerable people away, like tourists, and quite often they'll have a time limit on them. This one doesn't have a date on it. It was just handed over. So some people will have just a complete full-on ban from an area. It's quite hard to find out what the actual law is on this stuff, but you know, even after doing some research, it's very difficult, you know, not knowing where you stand in the law because it's so complex and confusing. You know, the officers themselves quite often are confused because, you know, it doesn't work, or there's just so many different kinds of layers to what is in the law and what isn't in the law. Most people are angered when they find out that this is what is being implemented rather than support, that the energy is being spent on the criminal justice system and punishing people rather than supporting them to not fall into that position. Yeah, and in terms of you know, the governance around operations such as this, it's scary to think, you know, that people at the top are putting energy and money, taxpayers' money into programs and huge operations to just flyer
you know, flyer vulnerable people with punishments rather than spending that time to actually care for people.